Today I will be interviewing Ted Evans, a Penn State student who ran in the 2013 Boston Marathon on April 15th. Most everyone knows of the bombing incidents that occurred that day. So Ted, tell me, where were you when the bombs exploded?
My family and I had walked to a nearby mall after the race to look for food. Usually after a race, especially a marathon, I'm pretty hungry. It was located about a half mile from the finish line. We were standing in line for food when we heard a large bang. I initially thought it was thunder, although it had been a cloudless day, so I thought this was unusual. Then a large crowd of people came running through the mall screaming. I heard somebody shout about a gunman. I panicked and froze up. I instinctively wanted to move towards the door, but my dad grabbed me and held me down before we snuck out of a side exit. We had no idea what was going on until I was able to check the news on my iPhone when we went outside.
That's terrible. What were your initial reactions once you found out what had actually happened?
As I said, I finally found out what happened by looking up the news on my iPhone. I was shocked and confused. The mood of the day had changed so quickly. It had started as such an amazing day full of excitement and happiness, but it was now complete chaos and terror. It only got worse when we returned to the hotel and saw the reports coming in on the television. For weeks, I didn't know how to feel about the situation. I was proud of my accomplishment, but that was overshadowed by my concern for the victims and the disbelief that I felt. I was afraid to talk about my feelings about it for a long time. Speaking with a few others that had ran in the race, they all expressed the same feeling.
Changing topics, how did you qualify for the Boston Marathon?
In order to run in the Boston Marathon, you have to qualify by running under certain age-weighted standards at a certain qualifying race and then go through an application process. For me, that meant that I had to run a marathon faster than 3 hours and 5 minutes in order to qualify. I qualified for the 2013 race at the Steamtown Marathon in Scranton, Pennsylvania, which is where I am from. It was my first marathon that I had ever ran, and I was thrilled with my time of 2 hours and 51 minutes.
How many marathons have you ran, and what attracted you to run the Boston Marathon?
At this point, I have ran and finished 3 marathons. Running in the Boston Marathon is considered a status symbol within the running community. It is very prestigious because of how selective it is. It was that prestige that drew me to the race. I like to challenge myself, and with such strict entry requirements, qualifying for Boston required enormous amounts of commitment and effort on my part.
Tell me, what was it like running in the Boston Marathon?
The race itself, I would say, was one of the greatest experiences of my life. It was everything I'd hoped it would be and more. From the start of the race in Hopkinton to the finish line on Boylston Street in downtown Boston, it was every runner's dream come true. I actually have a very difficult time describing the race in words. Every mile of the course, thousands of spectators lined the streets waiting to see the runners go by. Small kids leaned in to try and get a high five from the runners. Everywhere you looked, there were signs and shouts of encouragement. Even in the race itself, there was a sense of camaraderie, with all the athletes cheering each other on as we made our way into Boston. Before running Boston, the largest race I had participated in had 3,000 runners, but this year's Boston Marathon was close to 30,000. The scope of the race was almost overwhelming. I think I smiled for the entire 26 miles.
What lessons did you learn from the experience, and will you run in the Boston Marathon again?
My family and I were very lucky at this year's race. Many people lost loved ones, and many more were permanently injured. I couldn't be more grateful that my family is safe. Sometimes you take what you have for granted and forget how quickly things can change. My experience certainly taught me to appreciate everything that I have and to live in the moment. I will certainly be running in the 2014 Boston Marathon. I knew the moment that I finished this year's race that I wanted to do it again. I actually recently received my confirmation letter in the mail, notifying me that I have officially been accepted into the 2014 marathon.